The helicopter blades cut through the cold Antarctic air like metal knives. Inside the small aircraft, Dr. Marcus Steinberg sat quietly, but his mind was racing with excitement. He looked out the window at the endless white landscape below. Snow and ice stretched as far as his eyes could see. This was his moment. This was what he had been waiting for his entire career. Steinberg was 52 years old and had spent 20 years studying ice and snow in the coldest places on Earth. He had been to the North Pole 3 times. He had climbed dangerous mountains covered in ice. He had written books about glaciers that other scientists respected. People called him one of the best ice experts in the world, and Marcus Steinberg believed every word they said about him. The helicopter pilot spoke through the radio headset. "Dr. Steinberg, we will reach the research station in 10 minutes. The weather is getting worse. Are you sure you want to do this trip?" Steinberg smiled and adjusted his expensive winter coat. "Pilot, I have been in storms that would make grown men cry. A little wind and snow does not scare Marcus Steinberg." Next to him sat his team of 5 other people. Dr. Sarah Chen was 28 years old and had just finished her studies about rocks and Earth. She was nervous about this trip but excited to work with the famous Dr. Steinberg. Dr. James Rodriguez was 31 and specialized in studying the ground under ice. He had read all of Steinberg's books and felt honored to be chosen for this mission. Alex Petrov was the climbing expert. He was 35 years old and had climbed mountains all over the world. His job was to keep everyone safe when they went down into the dangerous ice holes. Lisa Murphy was 29 and an expert with radios and communication equipment. Dr. Frank Williams was 42 and the team doctor. His job was to take care of everyone's health during the dangerous mission. All of them had heard stories about the place they were going. Local people called it the Devil's Throat. It was a huge crack in the ice that went down very deep into the earth. 3 groups of people had tried to explore it in the past 10 years. None of them had come back safely. Some had died, others had been rescued but were badly hurt. The helicopter landed at the small research station with a loud noise. Snow flew everywhere from the spinning blades. As soon as the engine stopped, the team heard the howling wind outside. Even inside the warm helicopter, they could feel how cold it was. A woman in a thick military jacket walked toward them. This was Captain Elena Vasquez, the person in charge of the research station. She was 40 years old and had spent 15 years in Antarctica. Her face looked serious and worried as she approached Dr. Steinberg. "Dr. Steinberg," she said as she shook his hand, "I am Captain Vasquez. I have been waiting to talk to you." Steinberg stepped out of the helicopter and breathed the cold air deeply. "Captain, it is good to finally be here. My team and I are ready to make history." Captain Vasquez looked at the other team members as they got out of the helicopter with their heavy bags and equipment. "Dr. Steinberg, I need to talk to you about the area you want to explore. There are serious dangers that you need to understand." Steinberg laughed and picked up his bag. "Captain, I appreciate your concern, but I have been doing this kind of work for 20 years. I know how to handle dangerous ice conditions." They walked toward the small buildings of the research station. The wind was so strong it was hard to walk straight. Captain Vasquez had to raise her voice to be heard over the noise. "Dr. Steinberg, this is not about normal ice conditions. The area you want to explore has killed people. Good people. Experienced people." Inside the warm building, Captain Vasquez spread out maps and photographs on a large table. She pointed to an area marked with red circles and warning symbols. "This is the region local people call the Devil's Throat. It is a crevasse system that goes down more than 300 meters deep. The ice there is not stable. It moves and cracks without warning." Dr. Chen looked at the maps with interest. She had studied similar ice formations in school, but had never seen anything quite like this. The photographs showed deep, dark holes in the ice that seemed to go down forever. Dr. Rodriguez examined the geological surveys and noticed unusual readings in the data. The local Inuit guides refused to go within 5 kilometers of this place. Captain Vasquez continued. "They say their grandfathers told them stories about this area. They say the earth is angry there and swallows people who do not show respect." Steinberg waved his hand dismissively. "Captain, with all due respect, I'm a scientist. I do not make decisions based on old stories and superstitions. I make decisions based on facts and data." Captain Vasquez pulled out more documents. These were official reports from the International Antarctic Treaty Organization. "Dr. Steinberg, this is not about superstitions. These are scientific reports. Look at this data. She showed him computer printouts with numbers and graphs. The papers showed temperature readings that changed very quickly. They showed seismic activity that indicated the ground was not stable. They showed ice thickness measurements that did not make sense for that type of terrain. 3 expeditions have attempted to explore this region in the past decade, Captain Vasquez explained. The first team lost 2 members when an ice bridge collapsed. The second expedition had to be rescued by helicopter when they became trapped in a storm. The third group barely escaped when the entire section of ice they were on broke away and started floating toward the ocean. Alex Petrov, the climbing expert, studied the photographs carefully. He had climbed in many dangerous places, but something about these images made him uncomfortable. The ice formations looked unusual. The cracks and holes seemed to follow patterns he had never seen before. "Captain," Petrov said, "these ice structures do not look normal to me. In my experience, crevasses usually form in predictable ways. But this," he pointed to the photographs, "this looks chaotic, unpredictable." Dr. Williams, the team doctor, was reading through medical reports from the previous expeditions. "Dr. Steinberg, these reports show that people who spent time in that area experienced unusual symptoms. Headaches, nausea, disorientation. Even the rescue teams reported feeling strange when they got close to the region." Steinberg looked at all the documents, but his expression did not change. His confidence remained as strong as ever. "Ladies and gentlemen, I understand your concerns, but let me explain something to you. I am not like the people who failed before me. Those expeditions were led by amateurs and inexperienced explorers." He walked around the table, pointing to different parts of the map. "I have been in worse conditions than this. I have navigated ice fields that would terrify most people. I have survived storms that destroyed entire research stations. The difference between me and those other expeditions is simple: experience, skill, and proper planning." Captain Vasquez tried one more time. "Dr. Steinberg, the weather forecast shows a major storm system moving toward this area. It will arrive in less than 2 days. If you go down into the crevasse system and get trapped by this storm, we will not be able to rescue you until it passes. That could be a week or more." Dr. Chen looked worried. "Dr. Steinberg, maybe we should wait until after the storm passes. We could use the time to study the data more carefully and plan a safer approach." Steinberg's face showed annoyance for the first time. "Dr. Chen, I did not spend 2 years planning this expedition and bring the best team money can hire to sit in a warm building drinking coffee. We have a job to do and we are going to do it." He turned to Captain Vasquez. "Captain, I appreciate your warnings, but I'm not interested in changing my plans. My team and I will begin our descent tomorrow morning. We have the best equipment, the best training, and the best leader. We will succeed where others have failed." Lisa Murphy had been quietly checking her communication equipment. "Dr. Steinberg, I am getting some unusual interference on the radio frequencies. The signals are not clear when I try to communicate with stations near that area. Technical difficulties are normal in remote areas." Steinberg replied quickly. "You will fix it. That is why you are here." That night, the team ate dinner in the research station cafeteria. Captain Vasquez tried once more to convince them to reconsider their plans. She told them stories about the previous expeditions. She showed them more photographs and data. She even brought in 2 Inuit guides who explained through a translator why their people avoided the area. But Marcus Steinberg was not listening anymore. In his mind, he was already successful. He imagined himself returning home as a hero. He thought about the newspaper articles that would be written about his discovery. He dreamed about the awards he would receive and the fame that would come with conquering the devil's throat. As the team went to bed that night, the wind outside grew stronger. Snow began to fall more heavily. The storm was coming sooner than predicted. But inside his warm sleeping bag, Dr. Marcus Steinberg slept peacefully, completely confident that nothing could stop him from achieving his goals. The morning came with dark gray clouds covering the sky. The wind was still strong, but not as fierce as the night before. Dr. Steinberg woke up early, excited to begin his mission. He looked outside the window and saw his team members already loading their equipment onto sleds. Captain Vasquez walked up to him as he put on his heavy winter boots. "Dr. Steinberg, the weather service just sent an update. The storm is moving faster than expected. It will be here in 36 hours, not 48. Steinberg did not look worried. He continued packing his gear. "Captain, 36 hours is plenty of time. My team moves fast and works efficiently. We will be down, Collect our samples and back up before any storm arrives. Outside, the team was preparing their equipment. They had ropes, ice anchors, drilling tools, sample containers, and enough food for 3 days. Alex Petrov was checking all the climbing gear carefully. He had spent many years climbing dangerous mountains, and he always checked everything twice. "Dr. Chen," Petrov called out, "help me test these ice anchors. Something does not feel right about them." Dr. Chen walked over to where Petrov was working. He was hammering metal anchors into the ice near the research station. These anchors would hold their ropes when they climbed down into the deep crevasse, but when Petrov pulled on the rope to test the anchor, it moved more than it should. "The ice here is softer than normal," Petrov said with concern in his voice. "These anchors should hold firm, but they feel loose. If the ice near the crevasse is like this, we could have serious problems." Dr. Chen touched the ice with her gloved hand. She had studied ice formations in school, and this did feel unusual. The ice looked solid, but it seemed to have a different texture than what she expected in Antarctica. "Maybe we should tell Dr. Steinberg about this," she suggested. They walked over to where Steinberg was talking to Dr. Rodriguez about rock samples they hoped to find. "Dr. Steinberg," Chen said politely, "Petrov and I noticed that the ice conditions here seem unusual. The anchors are not holding as well as they should." Steinberg looked at the anchors Petrov had placed. He pulled on one of the ropes and felt it move slightly. But instead of being concerned, he seemed annoyed. "Petrov, you are probably not placing them correctly. I have used ice anchors in conditions far worse than this. The ice here is fine." Petrov wanted to argue, but he respected Dr. Steinberg's reputation. "Yes, sir. I will place them more carefully." Dr. Williams was organizing the medical supplies when Lisa Murphy came running over with her radio equipment. "Dr. Williams, I am getting very strange readings on my instruments. The radio signals are being blocked or changed somehow. I cannot get clear communication with the main research station only 2 kilometers away." Williams looked at Murphy's equipment. The screen showed wavy lines instead of clear signals. Static noise came from the speakers when she tried to make radio contact. "Have you checked all the connections?" he asked. "I have checked everything 3 times, Murphy replied. "This equipment worked perfectly yesterday. But now every time I point the antenna toward the crevasse area, the signals become unclear." Dr. Rodriguez overheard their conversation. "Maybe there are minerals in the ground that interfere with radio waves," he suggested. "Some types of metal deposits can block radio signals." Murphy looked worried. "If we cannot communicate with the surface once we go down, we will have no way to call for help if something goes wrong." When they told Dr. Steinberg about the radio problems, he shrugged his shoulders. "Communication equipment always has problems in remote areas. Murphy, you are an expert with radios. You will figure it out. That is what I am paying you for." By mid-morning, the team was ready to begin their journey to the crevasse. They loaded their equipment onto sleds and began the 5-kilometer trip across the ice. The journey took 2 hours because the snow was deeper than expected, and the wind kept pushing against them. When they reached the edge of the Devil's Throat, everyone stopped and stared. The crevasse was enormous. It was like a giant mouth in the ice that went down so deep they could not see the bottom. The opening was about 50 meters wide and seemed to stretch for hundreds of meters in both directions. "This is much bigger than it looked in the photographs," Dr. Chen whispered. Alex Petrov walked carefully to the edge and looked down. Even with his powerful flashlight, he could not see how deep the crevasse went. "Dr. Steinberg, this is going to be more challenging than we planned. We will need to set up more anchor points and use longer ropes." Steinberg walked to the edge with confidence. He had seen many deep ice cracks before, and this one did not frighten him. "Gentlemen, lady, this is exactly what we came here for. This crevasse will make us famous when we discover what lies at the bottom." Dr. Rodriguez set up his instruments to measure the depth and structure of the crevasse. After 30 minutes of work, he looked at his readings with confusion. "Dr. Steinberg, these measurements do not make sense. The depth readings keep changing. First it shows 200 meters deep, then 300, then back to 200 again." "Your equipment probably needs calibration," Steinberg said quickly. "Equipment can malfunction in extreme cold." But Rodriguez was sure his equipment was working correctly. He had tested it that morning and it had worked perfectly. "Sir, I think there might be something unusual about the structure of this crevasse. The readings suggest there are hollow spaces and air pockets that we cannot see." Lisa Murphy tried again to establish radio contact with the research station. This time the static was so loud it hurt their ears. Dr. Steinberg, the radio interference is getting worse the closer we get to the crevasse. I can barely hear anything except noise. Dr. Williams was checking the temperature with his instruments. The temperature here is 5 degrees warmer than it should be at this location. That is very unusual for Antarctica. Petrov was setting up the anchor points for their descent when he made another disturbing discovery. Dr. Steinberg, the ice around the edges of the crevasse has unusual cracks. They form patterns I have never seen before. It looks like the ice is under stress from below. All of these warning signs should have made Dr. Steinberg stop and reconsider his plans. Any experienced explorer would have recognized that something was not normal about this place. But Steinberg's pride and confidence blinded him to the dangers his team was discovering. "Everyone listen to me," Steinberg announced in a loud voice. "I understand that you are nervous. This is a big expedition and you want everything to be perfect. But let me remind you why you are here. You are here because I chose you. I chose you because you are good at your jobs, not because you worry about every small problem." He pointed down into the dark crevasse. "Down there is the discovery that will make all of our careers. There are mineral deposits worth millions of dollars. There are geological formations that no human has ever seen. We are going to be the first people to explore this place successfully." Dr. Chen felt uncomfortable about proceeding, but she did not want to disappoint the famous Dr. Steinberg. "Dr. Steinberg, should we at least wait a few hours to see if the radio problems improve? If we cannot communicate with the surface, it could be dangerous." Steinberg's face showed irritation. "Dr. Chen, I did not bring you on this expedition to be afraid of radio static. I brought you because you are supposed to be a good geologist. Are you going to let some technical difficulties stop you from making the discovery of a lifetime?" Chen felt embarrassed and nodded her head. "No, sir. I am ready to proceed." Alex Petrov had one more concern. "Dr. Steinberg, the anchor points are not as secure as I would like. The ice is softer than normal, and with the unusual crack patterns, I am not confident they will hold if we encounter any problems." "Petrov," Steinberg said with a tone of authority, "you have climbed mountains all over the world. Are you telling me that you cannot handle a simple ice descent? I have read your resume. You have done more dangerous climbs than this." Petrov felt pressured to agree. "You are right, Dr. Steinberg. I can handle this descent." As the team prepared for their journey into the crevasse, the wind above them was getting stronger. Dark clouds were gathering faster than the weather forecast had predicted. The storm was still more than 24 hours away, but the conditions were already changing. Dr. Williams noticed that everyone was breathing a little harder than normal. "The air pressure seems to be dropping," he observed. "That usually means a storm is approaching faster than expected." But Dr. Steinberg was already putting on his climbing harness. "Williams, stop worrying about the weather. We have more than enough time to get down, collect our samples, and return to the surface." Rodriguez tried one more time to get accurate readings from his instruments, but the results kept changing. "Dr. Steinberg, I really think we should take more time to understand what we are dealing with here. The geological readings are unlike anything I have studied before." Steinberg was becoming impatient with his team's concerns. "Rodriguez, Chen, all of you listen carefully. I have been exploring dangerous places since before some of you were born. I have never failed a mission, and I am not going to start failing now. We are going down into this crevasse, and we are going to succeed." He clipped his rope to the first anchor point and tested it with a sharp pull. The anchor held, but it moved slightly in the soft ice. "See? The density." The darkness inside the Devil's Throat was complete. Even with their powerful headlights and flashlights, the team could barely see 10 meters in any direction. The ice walls around them seemed to glow with a strange blue light, but everything beyond that was black as night. Dr. Steinberg led the way down, rappelling confidently on his rope. Behind him, the other 5 team members followed more carefully. The deeper they went, the more unusual everything became. The ice formations on the walls looked different from anything they had seen before. Instead of smooth, clean ice, there were twisted shapes and strange patterns carved into the frozen walls. After 2 hours of steady descent, they reached a depth of about 100 meters. Alex Petrov checked his instruments and called out to the others. "We are at 100 meters depth. The anchor points above us are holding, but I can feel some movement in the ropes." Dr. Chen was examining the ice walls with her geological tools. "Dr. Steinberg, these ice formations are very unusual. The way the ice has formed suggests there has been a lot of movement and pressure from below. I have never seen anything like this in my studies. But Dr. Steinberg was not paying attention to Chen's concerns. He was focused on something else entirely. His headlight had caught a reflection from something in the ice wall. He moved closer to investigate and felt his heart start beating faster with excitement. "Everyone, stop where you are," he commanded. "Shine your lights over here." When all 6 lights pointed at the same spot on the ice wall, they could see what had caught Steinberg's attention. There were dark streaks running through the ice. These streaks looked like veins of metal or mineral deposits. The streaks caught the light and reflected it back with a greenish shine. Dr. Rodriguez repelled over to examine the streaks more closely. He scraped away some ice with his tools and found dark rock underneath. "Dr. Steinberg, this appears to be some kind of mineral deposit. I need to take samples to be sure, but this could be exactly what we are looking for." Steinberg's excitement was obvious in his voice. "Gentlemen, lady, this is it. This is the discovery that will make us all rich and famous. These mineral deposits extend much deeper into the ice. We need to go down further and establish a base camp so we can collect proper samples." Dr. Williams, the team doctor, was monitoring everyone's condition carefully. At this depth, with the strange air pressure and temperature changes, he was concerned about how the team was handling the environment. "Dr. Steinberg, we have been descending for 2 hours. We should rest and check our equipment before going any deeper." But Steinberg was already looking down into the darkness below them, planning their next move. "Williams, we are all in excellent condition. We can rest when we have secured these mineral samples. Rodriguez, how much deeper do you think these deposits extend?" Rodriguez used his instruments to scan the ice walls. The readings were still confusing and kept changing, but he could see that the mineral veins went much deeper. "Dr. Steinberg, the deposits appear to extend at least another 100 meters down, possibly more. But sir, my instruments are giving me very strange readings. The geological structure down there does not look stable." Above them, Lisa Murphy was trying once again to establish radio contact with the surface. She had strung a long antenna wire up toward the opening of the crevasse, but the interference was getting worse instead of better. "Dr. Steinberg, I still cannot make contact with the research station. The deeper we go, the worse the radio problems become." Steinberg was examining the mineral deposits and making notes in his journal. He was already imagining how famous this discovery would make him. "Murphy, radio contact is not important right now. We are making the discovery of the century. Fix the equipment later." Alex Petrov was becoming more concerned about their safety with each meter they descended. The rope anchor points above them were holding, but he could hear small sounds from the ice that worried him. Little crackling and popping sounds that suggested the ice was under stress. "Dr. Steinberg, I think we should establish our base camp at this level. Going deeper could be dangerous if we need to evacuate quickly." Dr. Chen was also feeling nervous about going deeper. The ice formations around them were becoming more unusual and unstable looking. "Dr. Steinberg, I agree with Petrov. We should stop here and take samples from these deposits. We can always come back later for a deeper exploration." For the first time during the expedition, Dr. Steinberg seemed to consider his team's suggestions. He looked around at the mineral deposits surrounding them and calculated how much valuable material they could collect from this level. But then his ambition and greed took control of his decision-making. "No," he said firmly, "we are not stopping here. Look at these deposits. They are everywhere around us. If there are this many minerals at 100 meters, imagine what we will find at 200 meters or 300 meters deep. We are going to establish our base camp much deeper, where the really valuable deposits are located." Dr. Rodriguez tried to reason with his famous leader. "Dr. Steinberg, we only brought supplies for 3 days. If we go much deeper, it will take longer to return to the surface. We need to be careful about our food and water supplies." Steinberg laughed and patted Rodriguez on the shoulder. "Rodriguez, you worry too much. We have plenty of supplies and we work efficiently. Besides, once we collect samples of these mineral deposits, we will be able to fund a dozen more expeditions to this area." The team continued their descent. At 150 meters depth, the mineral deposits became even more impressive. The dark veins in the ice were thicker and more numerous. But other things were becoming more troubling as well. The ice walls around them were making more sounds. Creaking, groaning, and sometimes sharp cracking noises echoed through the crevasse. Dr. Williams was checking the temperature with his instruments when he noticed something alarming. "Dr. Steinberg, the temperature down here is getting warmer instead of colder. At this depth, it should be much colder than the surface, but My readings show it is actually 5 degrees warmer. Geothermal activity, Steinberg said quickly. Heat from deep in the earth. It is probably what created these mineral deposits. This is even better news for us. But Dr. Chen knew enough about geology to understand that geothermal activity in this area could be very dangerous. Warm temperatures could make the ice unstable and unpredictable. Dr. Steinberg, geothermal activity could mean the ice structure around us is not solid. If there is heat coming from below, the ice could collapse without warning. Steinberg was too excited about the mineral deposits to listen to Chen's concerns. Chen, you are being too cautious. I have worked in geothermal areas before. We know how to handle these conditions. At 180 meters depth, they found what Dr. Steinberg considered the perfect location for their base camp. There was a natural shelf in the ice that was about 10 meters wide and 20 meters long. The shelf was surrounded by the richest mineral deposits they had seen so far. Dark veins of valuable metals ran through the ice walls like a spider web. This is it, Steinberg announced. This is where we make our base camp. From here we can collect samples from all these mineral deposits. We can also explore even deeper if necessary. Alex Petrov examined the ice shelf carefully. It looked solid enough to support their weight and equipment, but he noticed several concerning details. There were stress cracks running through the shelf. The ice above the shelf had unusual formations that suggested instability. Most worrying, there were hollow sounds when he tapped on parts of the shelf with his ice axe. Dr. Steinberg, Petrov said cautiously, this shelf has some structural problems. I can hear hollow spaces underneath it. If too much weight is placed on the wrong spots, it could collapse. But Steinberg was already unloading his equipment onto the shelf. Petrov, this shelf has been here for thousands of years. It is not going to collapse because we put some camping equipment on it. Lisa Murphy tried once more to establish radio contact with the surface. She was now 180 meters underground with thick ice walls all around her. The radio produced nothing but loud static and strange electronic noises. Dr. Steinberg, we have completely lost all communication with the outside world. If anything goes wrong down here, no one will know where we are or how to find us. Dr. Williams was unpacking the medical supplies when he noticed that some team members were showing signs of stress. Dr. Chen looked pale and nervous. Rodriguez was breathing more heavily than normal. Even Alex Petrov, who was usually very calm in dangerous situations, seemed tense and worried. Dr. Steinberg, Williams said quietly, I think the team needs some rest. The descent has been physically demanding, and being cut off from surface communication is creating psychological stress. Steinberg looked at his team and saw their worried faces. For a brief moment, he wondered if they were right to be concerned. The radio problems were serious. The ice formations were unusual. The temperature readings did not make sense. Everything about this place was different from what he had expected. But then he looked at the mineral deposits surrounding their base camp. The dark veins of valuable metals were everywhere. This discovery would make him the most famous explorer in the world. It would bring him wealth, fame, and respect that would last for the rest of his life. The first sign of trouble came at 3 o'clock in the morning. Dr. Williams was keeping watch while the others slept when he heard a sound that made his blood turn cold. It was a deep rumbling noise that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The sound was so low and powerful that he could feel it in his chest. Williams quickly woke up Dr. Steinberg. Sir, something is happening. Listen to that sound. Steinberg sat up in his sleeping bag and listened. The rumbling continued for about 30 seconds, then stopped. Probably just ice settling. That is normal in glacier environments. But Williams knew this was not normal. He had spent time in cold places before, and ice did not make sounds like this. Dr. Steinberg, I think we should wake the others. This does not sound like normal ice movement. Before Steinberg could answer, the rumbling started again. This time it was louder and lasted longer. Alex Petrov woke up immediately and grabbed his flashlight. What is that noise? Dr. Chen and Dr. Rodriguez woke up when they heard Petrov talking. Lisa Murphy was already awake because the strange rumbling was creating interference with her radio equipment. All 6 team members sat in their sleeping bags, listening to the frightening sounds echoing through the crevasse. Everyone stay calm, Steinberg said, but his voice did not sound as confident as usual. These are just natural sounds. Glaciers and ice formations make noise as they move and adjust. Alex Petrov was already putting on his climbing gear. His years of experience in dangerous places had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now his instincts were screaming danger. Dr. Steinberg, I think we should pack up and start climbing back to the surface immediately. Something is not right here. Petrov, it is 3 in the morning. We cannot climb safely in the dark, Steinberg replied, but even as he said it, he was looking up toward the distant opening of the crevasse. The tiny spot of light that had been visible during the day was now completely black. Dr. Rodriguez was checking his geological instruments. The readings were more chaotic than ever before. Dr. Steinberg, my seismic equipment is detecting movement in the ground around us. It looks like there is shifting happening in the ice and rock layers. The rumbling sound came again, even louder this time. Now they could feel the ice shelf underneath them vibrating. Small pieces of ice began falling from the walls above them. Dr. Chen grabbed her helmet and put it on quickly. Dr. Steinberg, Chen said urgently, the ice around us is becoming unstable. We need to evacuate this area right now. For the first time since the expedition began, Dr. Steinberg looked genuinely worried. He had been in many dangerous situations before, but he had never experienced anything like this. The sounds and vibrations were unlike anything in his 20 years of polar exploration. Lisa Murphy was frantically working with her radio equipment. Dr. Steinberg, I am getting some signals now, but they are very weak. I think I can hear voices, but I cannot understand what they are saying through all the static. Keep trying, Steinberg ordered. We need to establish contact with the research station. Suddenly, a much louder sound echoed through the crevasse. It was like the roar of a giant animal mixed with the sound of breaking glass. The ice shelf they were camping on shook violently, and several large chunks of ice crashed down from the walls above them. Everyone put on your helmets and safety gear now, Petrov shouted. This place is becoming very dangerous. Dr. Williams was checking his weather instruments when he made a terrifying discovery. Dr. Steinberg, the air pressure is dropping very quickly. The temperature is also changing rapidly. I think the storm has arrived much earlier than predicted. High above them, the storm was indeed much worse than anyone had expected. Winds were blowing at over 100 miles per hour. Snow was falling so heavily that visibility was 0, but the storm was not the only problem. The unusual geological activity in the area was being triggered by the sudden changes in air pressure and temperature. Dr. Rodriguez was studying his instruments when he realized what was happening. Dr. Steinberg, I think the geothermal activity under this area is being affected by the storm. The rapid changes in pressure and temperature are causing the ground to shift. Another violent shaking hit their ice shelf. This time a large crack appeared across the middle of their campsite. The crack was about 2 meters long and seemed to be getting wider. Everyone move away from that crack, Petrov commanded. Gather all essential equipment and prepare to climb out of here immediately. Steinberg looked at the mineral samples he had collected. Boxes full of valuable rocks were scattered around their campsite. These samples represented the discovery of his lifetime. We cannot leave all these samples behind. This is the most important geological discovery in decades. Dr. Steinberg, Chen said desperately, the samples are not worth our lives. We need to evacuate now while we still can. But Steinberg was not ready to give up his dream. He started gathering sample boxes and stuffing them into his backpack. We are not leaving empty-handed. Help me pack these samples. Alex Petrov was already setting up the ropes for their ascent when he made a horrible discovery. He pulled on the main climbing rope that connected them to the surface, and it felt loose. Too loose. Dr. Steinberg, we have a serious problem. The anchor points above us are failing. Petrov pulled harder on the rope, and several meters of it fell down from above. The rope had broken free from at least one of the anchor points they had set during their descent. The soft ice conditions I was worried about yesterday have gotten worse. Our climbing route back to the surface may be compromised. Dr. Williams was packing the medical supplies when another violent shake hit the crevasse. This time, the crack in their ice shelf opened wider and longer. It now extended almost completely across their campsite. Dr. Steinberg, this shelf is going to collapse. We need to move to a different location immediately. Lisa Murphy finally managed to get a weak radio signal through to the research station. She could barely hear Captain Vasquez through the static. But the message was clear. The storm above was much worse than predicted, and rescue operations were impossible until it passed. Dr. Steinberg, Murphy reported, Captain Vasquez says the storm will last at least 24 hours, possibly longer. No helicopters can fly in these conditions. We are on our own. The reality of their situation was finally becoming clear to everyone, including Dr. Steinberg. They were trapped 180 meters underground in an unstable ice formation during a severe storm. Their climbing route to the surface was compromised. They had limited food and water, and the geological activity around them was getting worse. Petrov was examining their remaining climbing options. Dr. Steinberg, I can try to establish new anchor points, but the ice conditions are very poor. Even if I can get us connected to the surface again, climbing in these unstable conditions will be extremely dangerous. Another massive rumbling sound filled the crevasse. This time, the vibrations were so strong that everyone had trouble standing up. Large chunks of ice crashed down from the walls, and the crack in their shelf opened even wider. The shelf is breaking apart, Chen observed. We need to move our equipment to a more stable location. But when they looked around, there was no stable location visible. The entire crevasse system appeared to be in motion. Ice walls were shifting, new cracks were appearing, and the sounds of breaking and grinding ice echoed constantly around them. Dr. Steinberg looked at his expensive equipment, his valuable mineral samples, and his team of frightened experts. For the first time in his career, he was facing a situation that his experience and confidence could not handle. The forces of nature were proving to be much more powerful than his reputation and ego. Everyone listened to me, he said, but his voice was no longer strong and commanding. We need to work together to survive this situation. Petrov, do whatever you can to establish a climbing route to the surface. Murphy, keep trying to maintain radio contact. Williams, monitor everyone's health and our supply situation. Rodriguez and Chen were studying the ice formations around them, looking for any area that seemed more stable than their current location. Dr. Steinberg, Rodriguez said, there might be a narrower section of the crevasse about 50 meters from here where the walls are closer together. It might be more stable than this area. But moving 50 meters across unstable ice while chunks were falling from above would be incredibly dangerous, and they would have to carry all their essential equipment and supplies. Another violent shake hit the crevasse. This time, the crack in their ice shelf opened so wide that Dr. Chen had to jump across it to avoid falling into the dark space below. Dr. Steinberg, this shelf is going to collapse completely. We have to move now, or we will fall into the deeper parts of the crevasse. Steinberg looked down into the crack that had opened in their campsite. His flashlight beam disappeared into blackness that seemed to go down forever. If they fell through this shelf, they would fall much deeper into the crevasse where rescue would be impossible. Pack only essential supplies, he ordered. Leave the mineral samples. We need to move to a safer location. But even as he gave this order, Dr. Steinberg felt his heart breaking. The mineral samples represented everything he had worked for. They were his ticket to fame, wealth, and scientific recognition. Leaving them behind felt like giving up his digger. The next 24 hours were the longest of Dr. Marcus Steinberg's life. The team managed to move from their collapsing ice shelf to a slightly more stable area, but their situation remained desperate. The geological activity continued throughout the night. Ice walls cracked and shifted around them. Strange sounds echoed through the darkness. The storm above them raged with incredible fury. Dr. Steinberg sat against an ice wall, staring into the blackness. For the first time in his career, he felt completely helpless. All his experience, all his knowledge, all his confidence meant nothing in this situation. Nature had shown him that he was just a small, weak human being who had made terrible mistakes. Alex Petrov worked constantly to maintain their safety. He moved anchor points when ice shifted. He checked and rechecked their limited climbing equipment. He monitored the stability of their new location. But even Petrov, with all his climbing experience, knew their chances of survival were becoming smaller with each passing hour. Dr. Steinberg, Petrov said during one of his equipment checks, I can try to establish a climbing route to the surface when the storm passes, but I need you to understand something. The ice conditions are unlike anything I have ever encountered. Even under the best circumstances, getting everyone out safely will be extremely difficult. Dr. Chen had been studying the ice formations around their shelter. What she discovered made her feel sick with fear. Dr. Steinberg, the geothermal activity is increasing. The temperature down here is rising steadily. If this continues, large sections of ice could collapse or melt. We could be buried under tons of ice and water. Dr. Williams was monitoring everyone's physical and mental condition. The stress, cold, and fear were affecting the entire team. Dr. Rodriguez had developed a persistent cough. Lisa Murphy was showing signs of hypothermia despite their warming equipment. Even Alex Petrov, usually the strongest member of the team, was becoming exhausted from constant work and worry. Dr. Steinberg, Williams reported, "Our food and water supplies will last about 18 more hours if we ration carefully. After that, we will be in serious danger of dehydration and starvation." Steinberg looked at his team members. These were good people who had trusted him. They had believed in his reputation and experience. They had followed him into this deadly trap because they respected his knowledge and leadership. Now they might die because of his arrogance and poor judgment. Dr. Rodriguez was still trying to understand the geological forces that were threatening them. "Dr. Steinberg, I think this entire region is built on unstable foundations. The mineral deposits we found are probably signs of ancient geological activity. We should never have attempted to explore this area without much more extensive preparation and research." Lisa Murphy continued trying to maintain radio contact with the surface, but the signals remained weak and filled with static. Occasionally she could hear Captain Vasquez trying to reach them, but communication was nearly impossible. "Dr. Steinberg, I think Captain Vasquez is trying to organize some kind of rescue operation, but I cannot get clear information about what they are planning." As the second day of their ordeal began, the geological activity started to decrease slightly. The violent shaking became less frequent. The sounds of cracking and breaking ice became quieter. But their situation was still desperate, and everyone knew that time was running out. Alex Petrov made a dangerous reconnaissance climb to check the condition of the crevasse walls above them. When he returned, his news was both good and bad. "Dr. Steinberg, the ice has stabilized somewhat, but our original climbing route is completely destroyed. I found what might be an alternative route, but it is very dangerous and will require expert climbing skills from everyone." "How dangerous?" Dr. Williams asked. Petrov considered his answer carefully. "Under normal conditions, with proper equipment and good weather, I would rate it as an expert-level climb that only very experienced climbers should attempt. In our current situation, with limited equipment, unstable ice, and team members who are not expert climbers, it is extremely dangerous." Dr. Chen spoke up quietly. "Alex, what are our chances of everyone making it to the surface safely?" Petrov looked at each team member before answering. "Honestly, if we attempt this climb, some of us might not make it. But if we stay down here much longer, none of us will survive." The brutal truth of their situation was now clear to everyone. Dr. Steinberg's poor decisions had put them in a position where their only choices were between different types of deadly risk. Late, on the second day, Lisa Murphy managed to establish brief but clear radio contact with Captain Vasquez. The conversation was short but provided crucial information about conditions on the surface. "Murphy, can you hear me clearly?" Captain Vasquez's voice came through the radio with unusual clarity. "Yes, Captain. This is the best signal we have had in 2 days. The storm is ending, but there is still dangerous weather on the surface. We have helicopter rescue teams standing by, but they cannot approach the crevasse opening safely. The wind and snow are still too severe for helicopter operations." Murphy looked at Dr. Steinberg before asking the most important question. "Captain, how long before helicopter rescue becomes possible?" There was a long pause before Captain Vasquez answered. "At least 12 more hours, possibly 24 hours. The weather conditions are still very dangerous." When the radio contact ended, everyone understood what this meant. They did not have 12 to 24 more hours of supplies. If they wanted to survive, they would have to save themselves. Dr. Steinberg stood up slowly and looked at his team. These 5 people had trusted him, and he had failed them completely. His arrogance had nearly gotten them all killed. His dismissal of warnings and safety concerns had created this disaster. Now it was time for him to take responsibility. "Everyone listened to me," he said, and his voice was different now. Gone was the confident, commanding tone he had used throughout his career. Now he sounded humble, frightened, and deeply sorry. "I have made terrible mistakes. I ignored warnings from people who knew better than I did. I dismissed safety concerns that could have saved us from this situation. I let my pride and ambition put all of your lives in danger." Dr. Chen started to speak, but Steinberg held up his hand. "Please let me finish. For 20 years I believed that my experience and reputation made me superior to other people. I thought I knew better than local experts, better than safety protocols, better than nature itself. I was wrong about everything." He looked at each team member individually. "Sarah, James, Alex, Lisa, Frank, you are all good people and skilled professionals. You deserved a leader who would listen to your concerns and prioritize your safety. Instead, you got a leader whose ego was more important to him than your lives. Alex Petrov had been preparing equipment for their escape attempt. Dr. Steinberg, we can discuss mistakes later. Right now, we need to focus on getting out of here alive. Steinberg nodded. You are right, Alex, and from this moment forward, I am placing you in charge of our escape. You know climbing and safety better than anyone else here. I will follow your orders completely. This was perhaps the hardest thing Dr. Steinberg had ever said. For his entire career, he had been the leader, the expert, the person in charge. Admitting that someone else was more qualified than him felt like giving up everything he had worked for. But it was the right thing to do. Over the next 6 hours, Alex Petrov organized the most dangerous climb of his life. Using techniques he had learned in mountain rescues and extreme climbing situations, he established a route that could potentially get the team to the surface. The route required crossing unstable ice sections, climbing through areas where pieces continued falling from above, and navigating around geological damage that had occurred during the past 2 days. Dr. Chen would go first, because she was the lightest team member and could test whether the route was safe. Dr. Rodriguez would follow, then Dr. Williams, then Lisa Murphy. Alex Petrov would climb with Dr. Steinberg, who was showing signs of psychological breakdown and needed constant supervision. The climb began at dawn on the 3rd day. One by one, the team members made their way up the dangerous route Petrov had established. Dr. Chen reached the surface after 4 hours of careful climbing. Dr. Rodriguez made it safely but suffered minor injuries from falling. Dr. Williams and Lisa Murphy both reached the surface exhausted and hypothermic but alive. Alex Petrov and Dr. Steinberg were the last to attempt the climb. Steinberg was barely functional by this point. The stress, cold, and realization of his failures had broken his spirit completely. Petrov had to guide him through every movement, encourage him through every difficult section, and physically support him when his strength failed. When they finally reached the surface, 14 hours after beginning their escape, the rescue helicopters were waiting. The 6 team members were immediately evacuated to medical facilities. All of them survived, but the physical and psychological damage would last for months. The investigation that followed was thorough and damaging to Dr. Steinberg's reputation. Official reports documented 17 separate safety violations and procedural failures. The scientific community condemned his reckless endangerment of his team. The mining company that had hired him filed criminal charges for breach of contract and negligence.